tēnā tātou katoa. E te minita, e te rangatira, e te kai hautū o te waka o te mātauranga i roto i tēnei whenua a tāhua o tātou. Nau mai, haere mai, piki mai, ki roto i tēnei whānau, me ki te runanga mātauranga katorika o Aotearoa. E te minita, tēnā koe, e mahi ngātahi ana, e whakaū ana i ngā āhuatanga, e pānei ki te noho o te hāhi me te krauna. Engari, ko te mihi nunui rawa ki a koe, mō tau tūkaha, kia piki ai te oranga a tinana, a wairua, a hinengaro, o ngā akonga katoa o tēnei motu a tāhua o Aotearoa. Nō reira, nau mai, piki mai, ki roto i tēnei whānau. Kia ora tātou.
Thank you, Georgina. Tēnā koe, Minister, nau mai, haere mai, tēnā koutou katoa. Bishops of New Zealand, distinguished guests and delegates, on behalf of the members of the Catholic Education Convention, Minister, I warmly welcome to you one of our triennial gatherings. This is the 7th one we've had since 1996. Your presence honours us and honours our Catholic community, so thank you for taking time to be with us today. Additionally, Minister, on behalf of the team here, I want to thank you, your good self and the government for seeing fit to honour 3 of our principals in the recent Queen's Birthday honours. And additionally, we are all honoured by this recognition, as are others who are in the education sector. And if I could also include myself publicly, for the New Year's honour which I received, and Minister, just so you know, I said something yesterday, as you have said with me on more than one occasion. This is an honour not only for Catholic schools, but integrated schools and more broadly the education sector. And I just wanted to acknowledge that in your presence. And I was bold enough, and I'm glad I did it because of the way it was received, to wear my insignia yesterday all day. So, Minister, thank you for the government's recognition, because as a sector we've struggled, as you well know, since 1877 and probably more particularly in more recent times, and the fact that the government has come along and recognised people over several generations, I can assure you, is deeply appreciated. Ladies and gentlemen, I've had the pleasure of working with 15 Ministers of Education since 1980. And I say that to you genuinely. I can name the lot of them, and I can say a few words about each of them, but I won't. And I've got to say this to you, because I have got a sort of a 30 years of reflection on this. So this Minister is exceptional in that her major goal is to energetically work with the sector to help lift educational outcomes for all of our nation's kids. I commend her for that, and she, along with the Prime Minister, who says this very frequently, that education is a passport to a successful life, and the Prime Minister goes on to say, and it's the great liberator, and all we can say as educators, who can disagree? So, Minister, thank you for your leadership, and I have the pleasure on behalf of the integrated sector, including the Catholic sector, to see a lot of the Minister. I want to thank her for her leadership and encouraging school communities to work more collaboratively to enable teachers and students to be the net winners in the learning outcomes for our kids. People, there are no easy routes to ensure that all the nation's students enjoy successful education and to build on their talents and their skills, whatever they happen to be. But Minister, be assured that we are all committed to the goals that you have, so that we're fundamentally on the same page. So I now have great pleasure in inviting you to address the gathering.
Sort of a do-si-do to get in front of the lectern. Hoi anō, tēnā koutou katoa. Tuatahi e te kōka, e te whaia, tēnā koe nā hau I mihi mai kia uru ki Wainganui I tēnei me ki whakaminenga I tēnei ahi. Tēnā koe nā hau te reo pōhiri kia au I tēnei wā. Hoi anō rā, me mihi hoki ka tika ki a koe, nā hau I whakarangatira me ki ngā kōtiro I haere ki tō kura, kia eke rātou ki runga I tō rātou ake wāhaere whakamua. Me te mihi anō hoki ki a koe e whakai mai te āwhina I roto I te pirimia te wāhi, te whaiwhai haere tērā. Hoi anō rā, tēnā koe, tēnā koutou, kia ora tātou katoa. Good afternoon, and thank you very much for the welcome here. I was just acknowledging Georgina's welcome to me in Te Reo Maori, and taking the opportunity to thank her for the work that she has done over many years at her school of St. Joseph's in the Hawke's Bay, and the many young women who have emerged from that school well qualified academically and very adept at navigating their way through society and through community. And much of that is an acknowledgement of the leadership that she shows in that school and in the wider community. I also wanted to acknowledge Georgina for the fact that she's agreed to participate in what has turned out to be perhaps I hadn't thought enough about this, but it's actually quite an arduous exercise. She's on the panel of selection for the Prime Minister's Education Excellence Awards, and that does entail them travelling around the country and talking to the schools that have submitted for this particular honour. And we will be celebrating those next week here in Wellington when the Prime Minister makes those awards. So I wanted to acknowledge and thank Georgina for her participation in that. And since I'm just on that little matter for the minute here, I would like to do a little promo to you all for your schools. We're very keen to be able to lift the general community's celebration of education in all its manifest opportunities for our young people. And the Prime Minister's Education Excellence Awards, which we began last year, are based on their best evidence synthesis. And every one of the 4 categories are based on collective and community effort. There are no individual awards. It's about the best, it's about excellence in governance. It's about excellence in engaging the parental community. It's about excellence in leadership and excellence in teaching. And so we will be opening again for submissions and nominations, I think at the end of this year or the beginning of next year. So it would be lovely to see some of your schools putting yourselves forward to demonstrate the excellence that you practice every day in the way that you organise your school community. Okay, that was an unexpected opportunity for me just to get that in there. And now if I might return to the speech carefully crafted for me by my staff. No, I won't do that just yet. Yes, sorry, I will. Okay. Cardinal John Dew, Archbishop of Wellington, bishops, priests, all of the Catholic community, principals, teachers, parents. It is a delight to once again join your convention this year and to have the opportunity to address you for a short while. However, my short whiles, I've been advised by my daughters, are somewhat longer than other people's short whiles. So when I am exhausting your interest, you could give me my husband's sign when he feels that that is occurring, where he just goes. However, he's earned that over years of happy and magnificent marriage. So I did just want to acknowledge all of you. And I also would like to go on to acknowledge Sir Brother Patrick. He has indeed been knighted in the New Year Award. It is indeed a reflection not only of his personal and specific contribution to Catholic education, to faith-based education, and to education across Aotearoa New Zealand, but it is also an acknowledgement, and one that I've been very keen to ensure that we do, that we more and more put up for honours and awards people who have been contributors to education. Typically, New Zealand has tended to have acknowledgements of sports people, of business people and so forth, and so that it should. because we are a very diverse society. So I'm not knocking any of that, but I've made it my mission to keep profiling educationalists and the contributions they've made. And so Sir Patrick was appropriately acknowledged in the New Year's honour. I think I had maybe that day or the day before actually stood in St. Peter's Square in Rome, where I was on holiday. And it was lovely to finally have the announcement being made, and it seemed fitting to reflect at that place, at that time, on Sir Patrick's contribution, but also on all of yours. I'm a fan of faith-based education. Actually, I'm a fan of good quality education, and coincidentally, not by accident, it would seem to me that more often than not, faith-based education is a very strong and powerful travelling companion to quality education. So to all of you here, thank you very much. Thank you for the contributions that you all make every day across our country to providing a better start in the education journey, a stronger journey through that, and a very positive departure into the next step of so many of our young New Zealanders. Thank you very much. Can I also take the opportunity to acknowledge that typically we also see many Maori and Pacifica students being successful in faith-based education in general and in Catholic education in particular. So thank you for that as well. Can I say that we are seeing all of our students' educational achievements trending up. I take as a kind of litmus test of how well our system as a whole is doing to how well we see Maori and Pacifica making progress. So we want everyone to be making progress, and everyone is. But the fact of the matter is that we still do have an excellence and equity gap, and we are seeing that not only close, but the base lifting as well. And so for 2014, the final NCEA results had all, and the final NCEA results for kids participating at school, because there's lots of other data metrics. So for kids participating at school, we're now at 88% for NCEA 2, we're at 82% for Maori, and we're at 79.7%. I was talking to a Samoan leader, and he said, let's just call it 80%, because it's 79.7, and that does seem right to me as well. 80% for Pacifica. Our big challenge, ladies and gentlemen, our big challenge is how do we make sure, however, that more of these kids are staying at school so they can be included in this. Because actually, that is, however, 82% and 80% of about 63%. So we still do have far too many of our young Maori and Pacifica, mainly boys, our gorgeous brown boys, far too many of them are still being hemorrhaged out of our system. And we need to both lift up those who have already left but have not got qualifications. And so in this budget, put together with the usual deft leadership of the Minister of Finance, the Honourable Bill English, he did agree to fund some monies so that we could operate this project called Count Me In. So these are for the kids that have left the system. We're focusing on 2,000 16 and 17-year-olds who have left the education system but are not in any further training. They're not in any kind of employment. They're not engaged in anything particularly productive at all. How do we re-embrace them and give them the opportunity to be successful? So we're pretty focused on that. And just to share with you, to ignite or lift you to another level of commitment, it takes 135 Maori kids and 73 Pacifica kids for a 1% lift in each of those populations. So if you think about that, that's numbers we can put our arms around. That's not hundreds of thousands. That's 73 more Pacifica kids. If you think about that in your schools, in your congregations, in your communities, how might we stretch even further to embrace 73 more, or 135 more Maori kids is another percentage lift in overall achievement across our country. So thank you for the work you're doing now, but can I encourage you, exhort you, impassion you even further to lift even more? Right. That's page 1 of my speech. Okay, don't panic. Presently, there are 238 state integrated schools in New Zealand, educating just on 66,000 students. And there is interest in growth. I completely understand that, and I encourage it. Where we have got successful models operating, we want to grow that success. We want to maintain our principle of choice so that parents are able to select options that best meet their needs for their children. So that at the moment is 238 out of 2,400 or 2,500 schools, and 66,000 students out of about 780,000. So, you know, there are more children out there that you could attract to your schools. Students from Catholic schools have gone on to play major roles in every aspect of New Zealand society, and at the moment, as you all know, are a considerable force within our cabinet. Not only Bill English, but of course Jerry Brownlee and the inimitable Christopher Finlayson, and they are all passionate, committed people to the best interests of our country, and are actually a great privilege to work with. I wanted to join your celebration, and so once we were able to unlock, we knocked at the doors at that end. We were not welcome in. We walked around to this end of the building and we knocked at these doors, and it looked like, no, we weren't still going to be able to get in. We're starting to think, must we scale these walls? I am given to drama. In any case, thank you to Ruakere Hond, who was passing and pressed the magic green button to let us in. And that did allow us entry to be here as the portal was being launched. And I think that is fabulous. We really do want all of your schools to take up this opportunity of online platforms, not just in terms of your greater administrative efficiency, not just in terms of ease of connectivity, but actually in growing the digital fluency of your students, of yourselves and of your students. Because these kids are already pretty fluent, but we would like to ensure that the digital fluency that they are gaining is very much advancing their educational progress. And this portal will give you the opportunity of all of that connectivity as a platform for all the work that you want to do. Can I also encourage you, I've been at a forum this morning, to think about how you can grow teaching quality time by putting routine transactions onto the platform. We all get very wedded to the way we've always done things, but actually the plan of work, the reporting, the administration of many things, you can digitise and grow yourselves more productive hours to put into the quality of teaching. So I want to encourage you to do that, as I am encouraging all schools to take advantage of the significant investment into schools to develop these portals and these online opportunities. I see Patrick Walsh's face beaming out here, and I can only assume it's because he is part of the first Catholic-based community of schools that has been approved in New Zealand and that I approved last month in Rotorua. So you will know that we have this fabulous policy investing in educational success. The underlying principles of it are ones you will be very familiar with and therefore very comfortable with. They are about community. They are about configuring around the pathway of the child. They are about adults, parents, teachers, leaders, mentors, all working together, combined in the common vision of how they help young people to be successful. And they are generally geographically based, because when kids go to early childhood, we want them to be, the communities to be configured of the primary schools they generally go on to, the secondary school they are most likely to go to. Obviously, it's not going to be one pathway for everyone, but generally in a physical neighbourhood, a geographical neighbourhood, that is what happens. The only two exceptions to geographically based communities of schools are faith-based and Maori language. or language-based. Because the parents of kids who go to those schools really consciously and conscientiously decide to go to this primary school to go on to that secondary school, because faith is the consistent travelling companion for faith-based schools, and for Maori medium, it is te reo Maori me ona tikanga. So those are the only two exceptions, and I have had proposals. In fact, I've had more proposals for exceptions than I've had proposals for the actual model. So I'm hanging tough, except for, as I said, faith-based and te reo Māori. So I do want to congratulate Patrick and his colleagues for leading the way in that regard, and I look forward to more proposals from the rest of you here today. Right. What I was actually asked to speak about was the growing ethnic diversity of students in Catholic schools, and something it's really hard to read here. Something called quantity funding? Righto, let me deal with the second first. I have already written and therefore committed to working on this issue and to resolving it with the Catholic Education Office, and we will do that. We have a funding review on now. I think there might be concern that that review is going to go on into the never never. It is not. That review needs to be concluded in time for next year's budget. And so I am including quantity funding and other related issues of concern and interest to you in this process. So that you'll have to take my word for it, that I am committed to finding a resolution for this and for you hearing about it. Okay? Right. We'll pop outside and release balloons shortly. No, it's just a joke. All right, so on ethnic diversity. Ethnic diversity is part and parcel of who we are as New Zealanders. And the fact that that is becoming more common in Catholic schools really reflects the fact that it's becoming more common or more obvious in New Zealand as a whole. And therefore the challenges to each and every one of us on how we respond to that, how we deal with it, how we are inclusive, how we are respectful, how we recognise that we all learn in different ways. And we don't need ethnic diversity to challenge us on those principles. You just have to be the parent of 2 kids and think, how did I have 2 children so different? How do I ensure that they get what they need in their difference, an absolutely beautiful difference? So it seems to me that if we start just from that very personal basis of understanding that we're all different, yes, we have much in common, and let's celebrate that commonality. In fact, I was just talking yesterday, I can't remember to which group, every day is filled with fabulous education groups that I go into their rooms and just suck the oxygen out of as I share my passion and thoughts for education. But what I was saying is that we have to not only deliver a great, rich, broad and deep curriculum to our students in schools, but we have to do it in a way that we are ensuring that they are also inculcated with the values that we consider to characterise who we are as New Zealanders. And so I was giving the example around ethnic diversity is something we have dealt with here or are dealing with here and will continue to deal with without some of the international examples we see of warfare arising out of ethnic diversity. And I give as an example Serbs and Croats, who can, to those of us not from there, look pretty much alike, and yet they have deeply different ethnic views about what is appropriate and what is not. We have managed to resolve many of our religious differences in ways that haven't brought us to war. The biggest civil challenge we've had in my lifetime was the Springbok tour. And that was a significant challenge for all of us, or which, as my daughters helpfully said, "Oh, Mum, that's history, isn't it?" Yes, darlings, but Mum was actually a part of that history. And so we have found, because we've not only had a great education, but because we value fairness and goodwill and inclusiveness and respect and reasonableness and taking risks and all of those kinds of things. So we need our education system to ensure that not only are our kids getting a great education, that they're getting the inculcation of a whole lot of values, which of course are part and parcel of the particular recipe of education that you offer to your students. So ethnic diversity, I'm not meaning to make light of it, but if we proceed from that starting point of recognising that we do have different perspectives, they lead us to different ways of behaving, and that doesn't make them worse or better, it makes them different. And the more we understand them, the better they make us as we reach out beyond our own cultural comfort barriers. But there are practical things available. We do operate and fund English as a second language programs. We do provide expertise with those kinds of teachers. We are involved in language programs with other countries. We are providing better support for schools that have particular social challenges. What I would like to see happen as more and more schools configure into community of schools is for us to, who's bought a NutriBullet? Don't be embarrassed. These make sure that all the good things stay in the seeds and, you know, all of that. So, well, clearly they're not having a very good effect on this audience. But the point I was going to make is that when they sell you the NutriBullet, they always say, and if you buy now, you'll get a set of steak knives, or if you buy now, you'll get, you know, 3 rubber mats or whatever. So I hope you're sitting there thinking in your postprandial sort of, you know, apathy that what is this woman going on about? Well, here's the thing. If you form communities of schools, we are putting together packages of social service support. We are putting together packages of business service support, and so on and so forth. Because if we're able to service an integrated community of 8, 10, 12 schools, as opposed to having to do 2,400 individual schools on their individual particular needs, it actually makes it more efficient and more effective. Right, well, I feel like we're getting to the end of your tolerance of me. Yum, 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 yum. So, I'm at the page where it says, thank audience for their time. I should just do that and speed myself on my way. In any event, there is a range of support available for the challenges that I am not underestimating. In case you think I'm not being serious enough about those particular challenges, we do have support available. We're happy to work with you on what that might look like. But no, we won't meet everybody's needs at exactly the same time to the full nth degree. But the Ministry of Education under Peter Hughes's Catholic leadership is actually, we are becoming much more service oriented, much more open and engaged, exactly the sorts of things that I have wanted. So, thank you. This is where I thank the audience for your time, for your attention, for your contribution, and look forward to seeing more of it as this wonderful year of 2015 unfolds in the small, smart, sassy country of Aotearoa, New Zealand. Kia ora tātou. Oh, I'm happy to. Yeah.
If I just call them and you take them. Yeah. Minister, thank you. And I said earlier on about the Minister's passion for lifting achievement, working with us and other colleagues up and down the country. You can see what I'm talking about. Minister, thank you for that. It's always inspiring to be on the receiving end of what you've got to say. People, the Minister's prepared to take a few questions. Who's going to be the first cab off the rank? I'll just grab your hand and then someone will come around with a microphone. So if you'd raise your hand and someone with a microphone will pick it up. This is Tony Hanning over here. You just say who you are, please, Tony.
Tony Hanning from the Catholic Diocese of Dunedin, the Education Office there. Honourable Minister, I was delighted to hear your recommitment to the importance of faith-based schools and aligning them to other schools, because for the first time, and I've been involved with the integration part of it virtually for the 40 years of integration, but in November last year, for the first time, in coming to Roost this month, a maximum roll increase was turned down on the grounds that there was room in the neighbouring schools, state schools, for those children. So this month, and certainly into next, for the first time in those 40 years of my work with that, we have to say to a Catholic family, sorry, but there's room at the neighbouring state school, where the freedom to offer the programs that they're seeking, the freedom to exercise their religious choice, is not available to them. So that's the first time that that's happened, and it seemed to be a significant shift, but it may be just an aberration, and I hope perhaps that we can revisit that one in light of what you've said today, and I felt comforted by that. Thank you.
Thank you for that question. My parents got married in Dunedin. My father is from Dunedin, and my grandfather was an Anglican minister. So, just as a matter of interest. It's neither an aberration nor an error. So this is a very vexed issue, and and we have imperfect solutions, because while the principle of choice is a very important one, it's not unfettered. And so we do have to make sure that the principle of fairness to taxpayer funding is also managed. And that means that if we have schools in the area that are denuding themselves over time, yet we are still maintaining those, then sometimes we do have to have a little moderation of the full ambit of choice. We try to do this in a way that is sensitive to and sensible for each community, but it isn't by any means the first time that has occurred across the country. We're working our way through to solutions, and my aspiration, I suppose, that is the overriding one here, is to make every school a great school, however we might define that. Because we also have the case where kids are denied from other schools, not just faith-based schools, because they're out of zone, because that school is full, because the neighbouring school doesn't has spare places, and so on. We also have the situation of, and we can map this now, of kids going in swathes across cities every morning and coming back again. And the cost and congestion that just delivers up for buses and cars and so forth. And so I'm not suggesting that we should make everybody go to their own school, but if we can make every school an attractive school and there is a range in a community, then that should be what is available. Because at the moment we really do have almost a third in some cities, sometimes a half, of going past 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 schools to go to one over there. We also have a concern that was in the newspapers last week of what is framed as white flight, of clearly Pākehā parents taking their children to higher decile schools and brown parents being left at the schools that are seen to be failing. And that's equally unacceptable to me, because part of who we are as New Zealanders is exactly as what we've been saying, is growing up together, rubbing shoulders with each other, having the experience of seeing through the lens of a different culture, playing netball together and rugby together and all of those kinds of things. So this is a long way from your particular question about a family not being able to be included because I turned down a maximum roll increase. But these are some of the many considerations that I take into account when papers of that nature come across my desk. And yes, I take all of them personally, and I sit there and think about it seriously before I make a decision. So in the case you're talking about, I regret that it wasn't favourable to you, but it was not an unthinking consideration of declining that application.
Thank you, Minister. That's been a vexed issue up and down the country for a period of time, and the Minister, I think, puts it into some perspective. Any other questions, please? Oh, Minister, I think you've wowed the crowds here. So, people, I'm now going to have the... oh, pardon me? Where's the hand? Okay, ma'am, thank you.
Tēnā koe, Minister. Bernie Lee from St Thomas of Canterbury College, Christchurch. I loved your analogy about the magic bullet. It reminds me of, and I'm probably telling my age now, Suzanne Paul. She used to talk about natural glow, but wait, there's more. You talked about communities of schools and the possibility of having social services and business services that can be linked with this. What other benefits can we get? Kia ora tātou.
Kia ora. Were you one of the finalists last year for the Prime Minister's Education Awards? Your school? Oh, you won? Well, I was right. You were a finalist and then you won. Congratulations. Congratulations. Okay. Well, the main benefits are that they, in this configuration, that they address what the evidence says, which is that transitions are very vulnerable times for particular kids. So this is about ensuring that the adults on either side of those transitions are actually ensuring that children move on with their education story. Too often they move from early childhood to new entrance, or year 6 to year 8, or on to intermediate or to secondary, and the receiving adults begin again with these children as if they had no previous chapter of an educational story. Now, this is less likely to be true in your particular arrangements, but it's pretty common across the rest of the system. So one of the biggest benefits is having adults get over themselves and talk across the transitions in a professionally respectful way about where is this child at, what do they need most, how can we keep their, propelling them along their particular educational journey. Another benefit is that you get additional expert teaching resources, you get additional classroom practice resources, you get additional leadership resources. You get 3 kinds of time, which I had to explain very carefully to my cabinet colleagues. I see they'll get release time, that is obviously to go out and do stuff. They'll get relief time, someone to replace them because they are released. And this new kind of time we are funding as part of this called inquiry time. So actual professional practice time. So all of those times are funded into this model. You get systematic collaboration. So I get from audiences, but Minister, the education sector is the most collaborative sector, and that's true, with the people you like, right? Usually the clusters are made up of principals who get on with each other, or teachers who get on with each other, and that's great. This model doesn't preclude that. What this model requires is collaboration of principals in the schools that are around the pathway of the students, whether you happen to have a prior personal relationship or not. It is expected that your professional proactivity will link you together around these children. So we don't yet know what more you will get, but think about what you could give, okay, what you could give to this community. So I was quoted in the New Zealand Herald last week or the week before around my disappointment that Auckland Grammar had pulled out of their community of schools because they had looked and seen that they weren't going to get very much. So this is about reciprocal obligations. This is about mutuality. It isn't measured in equal part as to what you get or give. It is about the notion of true community. Of getting, absolutely, but also of giving. Okay? Thank you.
Thanks, Minister. Thank you. Well, Minister, I think that's basically... Oh, there's Stephen Gray. He's a board chair, been there for about 25 years.
Thank you, Brother Pat. Minister, I have a little difficulty with your answer to the gentleman from Dunedin. In that if the faith-based communities are growing, there will be effectively a limit on their ability to educate the children within that community if there's empty classrooms down the road at the local state school. So how do we overcome that conundrum if the faith-based communities do grow and demand a faith-based education in the light that the community down the road, the state school system, has empty classrooms?
So we're not going to solve this issue here, right?
I didn't expect
And I'm not the first Minister of Education. I must be the 15th one, at least in Sir Patrick's lifetime. So I am not saying to you that the reason you have to turn down kids is because there are empty classrooms, but I am saying to you that the principle of choice is not unfettered, and we have to work our way through each situation. Now, one of the answers, so those of you from Christchurch know that I spent a year and a half of having to close schools and merge schools. And it was not a very, it was a highly emotional, highly charged experience. And we resolutely walked our way through that process. And I can tell you now, and those of you from Christchurch can tell you, that everything is settling. People are finding their place. You know, we are going to see Christchurch emerge as the leading educational system in New Zealand, particularly in terms of the physical arrangements there. So closing and merging schools is actually a very difficult thing to do. I'm not resiling from it, but I want to find other ways that make that possible to happen with greater community buy-in. Communities of schools offer us that opportunity of a grassroots reform, because if you've got 8, 10 or 12 schools all working around the pathway of kids, I would expect that they would start to say, actually, wouldn't this kid be better in your school? Shouldn't we be shedding these classrooms because they are surplus, and get much more focused on the quality of education that's being offered, rather than every individual school has to have this or that or the next thing. I would hope that as communities of schools grow, those schools themselves will stop saying we all have to have our own assembly hall, we all have to have our own library. Because bear in mind here, I'm talking about physically co-located schools in the main, right? So why wouldn't you say, do we all need to have assembly halls, or why don't we put our property money in and have one great performing arts auditorium? Why don't we, instead of all saying we can't attract great maths expertise to every individual school, why don't we agree that we'll put our maths money into having a team of 3, 4 or 5 experts who support all of our 10 schools? You know, why don't we start thinking in ways like that, as opposed to my individual school, I have a 5YA entitlement, I'm going to get this amount of extra square meterage, you know, in order to. Well, I'll tell you one of the reasons why not. It's because tomorrow's schools, while it did a lot of great things, it embedded a competition ethic based on who you could attract and keep on your roll. And that is why we are not only having a legislation review this year, we are having a funding review, because we need to try and neutralise those disincentives of working together and grow the ones of working together. Now, as we get that happening and we get greater balance across the different range of options available, we will be able to more and more say yes to various things across the country. But let me tell you that faith-based schools, okay, I'm getting on to risky ground. You haven't suffered from huge losses of population. You are at the cusp of a next growth spurt, I would hope, right? And I would hope Maori medium is at the cusp of a next growth spurt. Now, you're only interested in your spurt, and they're only interested in their spurt, but I have to be looking at the whole lot and see how can I try and be fair in a way that doesn't compromise great education or choice, and is as fair as possible to everyone. So I'm working on it, but it's taken at least 14 ministers before me, and it's landed on my desk. And I have to say, crikey, quite a few things have landed on my desk that seem to have bypassed a range of others. but I love this job. And, you know, we are sent at different times to do different things. And I continue to get up every morning absolutely passionate about the role I'm privileged to have at this time. So while I may not be able to give you the satisfactory answer that you are seeking, I commit to you that I'm working towards making you more satisfied, and maybe I should just keep turning up here each year and you can all think, you don't need to come because we're all satisfied now. Okay, I'm going to go and stop the need for, you know, the odd desultory hand to raise in the audience. And thank you once again for having me here. And I absolutely do look forward to continuing to work with Sir Patrick through to the end of the year, which, as I understand, his extension, his reprieve.
Now they know that.
Oh, oh! Could I announce that, Sir Patrick? Sorry, I didn't know.
All right.
Rightio. So I look forward to continuing to work with him. Is there anything else I wasn't meant to be saying? Thank you all very much. Thank you.
Stay there, Minister. Cardinal Johnson, thank you. See, we have got a good relationship with this wonderful minister. I always believe to give the minister heads up, so I gave her a heads up when the board, and Jeff Ricketts is here, and the bishops decided for a whole range of reasons that would be good if I stayed on to the end of the year. And I'm going to say now what I was going to say tomorrow, and that is the board has identified a very strong candidate. Just going to take us a little bit of time to get the whole thing in place. So people, I'm being up front, I'm really delighted to stay for a few more months and to be here until the 31st of December. Now, Cardinal John, your turn. Thank you.
Te Minister, tēnā koe. Georgina, rā ko Sir Patrick, tēnā kōrua, te whānau, tēnā koutou katoa. Minister, it's my pleasure to thank you on behalf of all who've gathered here for this Catholic Education Convention. Thank you for being with us, for being willing to address us and to answer some of the questions that have been put before you. It's also an opportunity for us as the Catholic education community to thank you for all that you do as Minister of Education. We know it's never easy for any minister to meet the wish lists of all those involved in education. But you do that so well and so generously. And in particular, we're very conscious of the time that you give to Brother Sir Patrick and the New Zealand Catholic Education Office, you and the staff at the ministry, so thank you very much for that. This convention has been entitled Horizons of Hope, and a convention like this gives all this Catholic education community the opportunity to come together and to bring those horizons a little closer as we work together, as we reflect on what our task is, and we, as you have acknowledged, we believe that we are doing a good job. It's a great opportunity every 3 years to think about the way that we provide Catholic education for those almost 70,000 students. And of course, how we do that in the context of Catholic character. Any education, of course, the task is to prepare students for life, for take up a meaningful role in the world we live in. And our task as Catholics is to get them, our students, to look to a wider horizon so that they can participate generously and willingly in society. So we thank you for your affirmation of faith-based education. We, of course, are challenged to broaden our horizons. We've been encouraged to do that throughout the world in our schools and parishes by Pope Francis, where he's encouraged us to look to the edges, to look to the peripheries, to see where we can provide support and assistance for those who struggle in life, and our schools do that. In our schools, the distant horizon is obviously coloured by the person of Jesus Christ and the challenges and the ideals of the gospel. And our staff and our students know that with that, we can make an enormous difference in the world. So we are always looking to the horizon. And these notes of mine were quite easy to read, because one of the horizons that we do hope will come a little closer, and we thank you for that. We do take you at your word when you spoke about the commitment to work on the quantity funding issue, because we do believe that that will bring our horizons closer. But Minister, you've done that for us already today. In your presence here, we thank you for your willingness to be with us. And we thank you for your passion when you get up every morning and say, yes, I'm going to do my best for the education community in New Zealand. So would you please join in thanking the Honourable Hekia Perata, the Minister of Education, for her time with us today.